Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here for Wednesday, August 12th with our Benny's Bat section. The idea of our Benny's Bat section is we try to go through every pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weaknesses are, and then try to target which batters are in the best spot to do, well against them on today's slate. First guy we're going to talk about today is Mike Pelfrey. Pelfrey has allowed left-handed bats to hit 291 against them and right-handed bats to hit 300 against them. His whip against left-handed bats is 173 versus 124 against right-handers. So left-handers are the way you want to try to attack them. There's a couple guys in that Texas team that stand out to use. You got Prince Fielder with a 405 WOBA and a 159 ISO number. Mitch Moreland with a 386 WOBA, 252 ISO number. And Sin-Shu Chu with a 362 WOBA and a 210 ISO number. Fielder is probably the best guy to use there. Moreland has kind of come back down to earth after he went on pretty much a home run barrage earlier in the year. Excuse me. Fielder's actually been showing a little more power himself, which is what was hurting him earlier in the year. His WOBA's been high all season. He's been getting a lot of doubles, gets on base a lot, does walk a lot. But again, he hadn't been showing the home run power. But lately, his home run power is starting to come back a little more. But he's still not really a big home run hitter. He's been doing a lot more of hitting for average, basically, is what we've been seeing out of him this year. Next guy we can talk about is Daniel Norris. Norris is making his 7th start. He just came over in a trade to the Tigers. He's a right-handed batter. He's a left-handed pitcher. Right-handed batters have done better against him. The only guy that really stands out on that Kansas City team for me is Lorenzo Cain. Had a big 4-for-4 game yesterday, has a 438 WOBA with a 246 ISO against left-handed pitching. So he's probably the one guy on that Kansas City team that I would look to use today. Next guy we can talk about is Nick Martinez. Martinez has reverse splits. Right-handed bats are hitting 298 against him with 9 homers and 58 innings. The only guy that really stands out to me on that Twins team is Miguel Sano. He has a 439 WOBA, 297 ISO number. Had another 12 points on DraftKings last night, so I definitely think that he's an option that you can use. His price is still pretty cheap on Fantasy Feud, too. I know I had him in my lineup this morning when I was looking over there, and I think he's somebody that you should look at, no matter what site you're playing on. If you haven't signed up yet for Feud, though, remember, they do have their qualifiers running right now for that big $500,000 tournament they have at the end of the season. If you want to get a good bonus on it, you can sign up through our Roto Curve links. Use the promo code CURVE, and you'll get a 100% deposit bonus. And then if you email over to help@RotoCurve, you'll even get a $25 bonus on top of that from the RotoCurve community for you to, play around on the site and check it out. After that, make sure you go to the forums and, let us know what you think about the site. I know the guys from Fantasy Feud are over there a lot. So if you have any questions, leave them in the forum, and either one of us or one of them will get back to you and try to answer your questions. Next guy I want to talk about, we got Matt Whistler. Left-handed bats are hitting 333 against him with 5 homers and 23 innings. Obviously, it's a limited sample size. He only got called up to the majors a couple games ago, basically. The one guy on that Tampa Bay team opposite him who really stands out is John Jaso. The catcher's been leading off or hitting on top of that order for Tampa Bay. He's got a 374 WOBA and a 174 ISO number. So those are some pretty good numbers out of the catcher position. His price is still cheap on a lot of sites. He hasn't came up there with some of the other elite catchers. And again, catcher's a very tough position to find guys that you really like. So if you can find somebody who can get you a couple hits like Jaso can, get on base a few times, maybe score a couple runs, definitely somebody who's worth looking at. He can even steal a base or two for you as well, although I wouldn't bank on it, but if you get it, it's a nice little bonus. Next guy we can talk about, Matt Garza. Garza has been pretty bad this year. Left-handed bats are hitting 298 against him with 9 home runs and 57 innings. He's also given up 10 home runs to right-handed bats. So he's definitely somebody who's prone to the long ball. Looking at that Cubs team, the 2 guys you really want to use, excuse me, you got Kyle Schwarber with a 458 WOBA, 282 ISO number, batting second in that order. And Anthony Rizzo with a 388 WOBA and a 249 ISO number. Those are really the only 2 guys in that Cubs team that I would be looking at. I know a lot of people have been playing Dexter Fowler lately, and he's not a horrendous play, but I just don't think he's a great one either. Same thing with Chris Coughlin if you need a salary saver, depending on what site you're on. Whenever they go up against a right-handed pitcher, Coughlin has been batting in the 3 hole for them. So at least you know he's on top of the order. Batting between Schwarber and Rizzo, he's going to see some pitches to hit, probably have a chance to get up with men on base, and also probably have a chance to get driven in by, a guy like Rizzo batting behind them. Now we get into a couple pitchers who are hot and cold kind of pitchers. So these are the kind of guys that you either stack against or you completely stay against. If you're playing in a tournament, you may want to take one of these guys hoping that they have one of their good games, or you may want to take all the bats against them hoping they have one of their bad games. And the two guys that I'm talking about are John Danks and CC Sabathia. So let's talk about Danks first. Danks right-handed bats are hitting .313 against him, 12 home runs and 89 innings pitched. But he's also thrown a couple gems in his last couple starts, and he sandwiched those gems next to games with negative numbers. I mean, he's come out and thrown 24, 26 fantasy points on DraftKings up, and then come back the next game and had a -5 or a -8. So I don't know which John Danks you're going to see here. What I do know is there's not a lot of guys on that Los Angeles Angels team that hit left-handed pitching well. The only guy who crosses the thresholds that we look at is Mike Trout. He has a .415 WOBA with a .302 ISO number, and he is basically the only guy who profiles to do well against left-handed pitching. So, like I said, I mean, Danks could give up 10 runs today. Danks could also blank them for 7. That's basically been his season. So I don't know which John Danks you're going to see, but I do know that the only guy I'm really looking at to take against him is Mike Trout. Next guy we talk about is CC Sabathia. Right-handed bats right now are hitting .326 against Sabathia with 21 home runs and 92 innings pitched. That's probably one of the worst stat lines for either side of the plate for any pitcher in the league. Now, again, he also went out last time out and threw an absolute gem. So you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you get a good start out of him. Sometimes you get, 5 runs in the first inning. The problem I have with this Cleveland team is what right-handed bats do you really want to target against them? There really is nobody who stands out. They just called up a guy like Zach Walters. Maybe he's a guy that could be in play as a right-handed bat. Giovanni Urshela, the rookie, he's doing all right this year. He might be somebody you can look at. But Ryan Rayburn is out, so make sure you don't use him in any of your lineups. I just really don't know where to go with this, to be honest with you. So, again, like I said, Sabathia, on paper, right-handed bats have been killing him. But I don't see any right-handed bats on Cleveland that are really scaring me. So, again, you could use them, you could not use them. I don't know which way to go with this game. It's not anything with any certainty. And anytime I don't have any certainty, at least for my cash games, I'm probably staying away from everything here. But for tournaments, I guess there could be some merit in using either side of the game because the way that these two guys have been pitching, sometimes they're lights out and can win you a tournament. Other times stacking against them could be the thing that wins you a tournament. So they're both high volatility. Next guy we can talk about, Aaron Brooks. Brooks in the minor league gave up a higher batting average to right-handed bats, even though he is a right-handed pitcher. And he has a really tough matchup today up in Toronto against the Blue Jays. You got Jose Bautista hit another homer yesterday, 384 WOBA, 304 ISO number. You got Josh Donaldson, 382 WOBA, 261 ISO number. Colabello, 373, 167. Encarnacion, 361, 249. So a big ISO number for him. Even Troy Tulowitzki. I mean, if you want to stack bats up against Aaron Brooks, I think it's going to be a popular option tonight. It didn't really work out last night. I know a lot of people were stacking Blue Jays last night, and it didn't wind up being a big thing. But again, I mean, I think that they should be able to get to Brooks. I do like a lot of the bats on that Blue Jays team, and all the guys that we just mentioned profile pretty well. So I guess it's something that you do at least have to consider. Next guy we can talk about, Jorge De La Rosa. Left-handed bats have been the way to get at him. They have a 289 average with 3 homers and 22 innings. He's also given up 10 home runs and 81 innings to right-handed bats, but they're only hitting about 240 against them. On that Mets team, I guess that would make Lucas Duda be the one guy who really stands out. Against left-handed pitching, lefty on lefty, he's 385 WOBA, 235 ISO number. So those are pretty good stats, pretty good numbers that put him in a good matchup here against the guy in De La Rosa who's been struggling with left-handers all season. You could also look at a guy like Wilmer Flores. I know he's second base and shortstop eligible on most sites. If he's cheap, I think you can go after him. I wouldn't go out of my way to pay up for him. But he does have a 377 WOBA with a 237 ISO score against left-handed pitching. So this is a pretty solid matchup for him. Again, not a great hitter's ballpark at home in Citi Field, but I think he's another guy that you could look at as a cheap option at second base or shortstop. Next guy we could talk about is Mark Burley. Left-handed bats, basically both sides of the plate are hitting about 260 against him, and he's given up about 8 home runs to both sides of the plate as well. His home run rate is a little bit higher against left-handers only because he's faced less of them. So you may even want to look at some of the left-handers. But for me, the guys that I'm looking at, the right-handers, there's really only one, and that's Josh Phegley. He's got a 392 WOBA with a 222 ISO number against left-handed pitching. The only other guy who would have stood out if he didn't get traded was maybe a Ben Zobrist. But other than that, there's some really, really bad numbers against left-handed pitching from that Oakland team. So I don't really see them, having a big day today, to be honest. Next guy we can talk about, Edinson Volquez. Right-handed bats are hitting 256 against him, which is basically the way to get to him, and that's not even all that great. You got a guy like J.D. Martinez with a 393 WOBA, 284 ISO number. He's probably the best option if you're going to take anybody against Volquez. But again, Volquez is a pretty good pitcher, so I'm not really looking to target him heavily. I'm not looking to take a lot of bats against him. Next guy we can talk about, Jordan Zimmerman. Zimmerman has allowed left-handed bats to hit 291 against him, 7 home runs in 69 innings pitched. He's going up against a Dodgers team that is really lefty-heavy. So you can look at guys like Yasmani Grandal, 391 WOBA, 238 ISO number. A guy like Adrian Gonzalez, 390 WOBA, 249 ISO number. And a guy who's pretty sneaky and who I've been using a lot more often lately is Andre Ethier, 382 WOBA, 210 ISO number. They actually have him batting cleanup lately. So as long as he's going to be batting in the cleanup spot, I definitely think he's somebody that you can look at. And again, depending on what site you're playing on, he's not priced up like some of the superstars. But if you're getting a cleanup hitter in a pretty solid offense in the right splits matchup, I definitely think that's going to be worth the money here. The last guy we can talk about is Andrew Heaney. He had an absolutely on-fire first couple starts since he was called up, but he's kind of cooled off over his last few and come back down to earth. Right-handed bats are only hitting 230 against them, but they have 10 home runs already in 32 innings pitched. That's a huge number. Obviously, if you're looking on the other side of that game, Chicago White Sox, to me, that says the one guy who's in play is Jose Abreu. Abreu's 378 WOBA with his 229 ISO number. Right-handed bat going up against the left-handed pitching. He's a guy that's got a lot of power. He would be the one guy who I definitely would think is going to be in play in that situation. And that pretty much sums it up for the guys that we're looking to target against and the hitters that are in good spots. Not really looking to take any Milwaukee bats against a guy like Jason Hamill. He's got about a 220 batting average to both sides of the plate. Nobody's really standing out for me on that, that Milwaukee team. I mean, Adam Lind had a good game yesterday. Looks like he's starting to hit the ball again. Left-handed bat in that Milwaukee order. He would probably be my favorite option if I was taking anybody, but I'm not sure if I'm going to work him in my lineups. Jake Odorizzi going up against Atlanta. Odorizzi has less than a 230 batting average to both sides of the plate as well. Atlanta's offense is pretty weak. I'm not really looking to target anybody there. Michael Wacha and Garrett Cole should be hooked up in a pitcher's duel in this one. Don't think I want a lot of bats from either one of those teams. It should be a low-scoring game. You got Danny Salazar going against the Yankees. He's been very good this year. He hasn't allowed a 220 batting average to either side of the plate so far this year. So Salazar is not somebody who I think you should have a lot of bats in your lineup against. Although I guess you could probably look at some of those lefties, but I just don't think it's a really good spot. Jacob deGrom going up against Colorado. deGrom has been my favorite Mets pitcher, and that's been saying something because the Mets pitching staff has been very, very good. Again, maybe you can look at a guy like Cargo who's been absolutely on fire, but outside of that, there's not a lot of guys I'm really looking to take there. I also don't know if I would take deGrom, even though they're at home and he's been very good. I feel like the Rockies could get a couple runs on him today. I don't think he's going to get shelled, but I also don't think he's going to be a top starter that's going to help you win, a big tournament. Then you got Clayton Kershaw going up against Washington, and I never take anybody against Clayton Kershaw. I don't care where or why or how bad he's been pitching. When this guy's on, he's probably the best pitcher that we've seen in the last couple years, and even when he's off, he's still one of the top pitchers in the league. So another guy that we're not going to be targeting against. So that pretty much sums it up for the analysis. Remember, it's only a 10-game slate tonight. There's a 5-game slate starting around like 1 o'clock, or it actually might even be a little bit later. I think it might be like maybe a 3 o'clock start. But if you want to get some rosters in for that, you can. This is basically just concentrating on the late games, the games with the 7 o'clock start on the East Coast tonight. And, that's all the breakdowns that we have. So thank you again for joining us here at RotoCurve for another edition of Benny's Bats. And as always, stay classy, DFS.